Hold on. It moved something on me again.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we're good to start.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council for February 9th, 2022. Glenn, would you please call the roll?
Greg?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Dan? Still waiting. Jill? Jill?
She's giving you the thumbs up.
Thank you. Claire?
Yes.
And I'm here. Currently 6 present, waiting for Dan. Go ahead.
We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the report from the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Horsley will be here later and giving us a full report, but I think Lena has a few remarks to make.
Yes, thank you. I will be very brief. So first, I'm just going to have a little bit of a COVID update. So I'm taking this directly from an update that the Board of Supervisors received from Luis Rogers yesterday. As you may have heard, we have learned the state's indoor masking requirements for the public will expire as scheduled on February 15th for all people who are fully vaccinated. When the order expires, masking requirements will still remain in place for everyone on public transportation, schools and childcare settings, long-term care and adult and senior care facilities, healthcare and correctional, and also healthcare and correctional settings. Though we did have a local indoor masking mandate when the state created theirs, we aligned. So when that February 15th date comes around, that will be effective in San Mateo County as well. A little bit of bright news, the level of virus transmission remains high, but has come down considerably from an early January peak, with our 7-day lagged case rate average report by the state yesterday at 85 cases per 100,000, comparing that to 144 a week ago. This is an average of 663 new cases per day compared to 1,123 in last week's data. So I'll put the rest of the data in my report and you can access it on the MCC website, but we're definitely on the approach. We're on the decline of this peak that we've reached. My other update is commute.org, which is a public agency. It's not a county agency, contacted our office to let us know that they are doing a coastside resident specific survey about travel patterns and transportation choices. I'll put a link to that in the chat. I think it's relatively short. You have until March 4th to fill it out and you can win some, I was gonna say cool prizes, but I think it's $200, which to me is a cool prize, but I don't know. And then lastly, I just wanna say I'm really excited for the RCD report about the first flush. And I wanna give a shout out to Sid Young, who was in my first flush group. So I'm excited to hear about that. And I am ecstatic to take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Lena?
What happened with the dog pilot program?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, I guess Lena can answer that. That'd be fine. I don't mean to.
No, absolutely. And, you know, I appreciate the save because I heard through Claire that it was not approved. And I've been trying to get some information from planning today. And unfortunately, I didn't get any in time for this meeting. So I don't have a good update just yet.
There are other people here from different agencies, and we may get more information on that as they give their reports. Harvey Roebuck from City of Half Moon Bay, you want to go ahead with your report?
Sure, very brief. Last council meeting, we had the first reading of an electrification ordinance, which is going to require all new construction starting in 2023 to be all electric. This has gone through many iterations, but the first reading finally got passed, and it's only going to affect new construction for the time being. We're going to have a climate action program, which might consider in the future how we can deal with existing gas-fired appliances. This coming council meeting on the 15th, we will be considering a redistricting map that was the unanimous decision of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and and that map is a 5-district map with a rotating mayor. So we're looking forward to having that finally out of the way. It's been 9 months in the making. Go ahead and answer any questions.
Are there questions for Harvey? No. Sid, do you have your hand up?
Oh, I thought I did, but I don't see it. Can I talk?
Sure.
Harvey, I was listening into the February 1st Half Moon Bay City Council meeting, and it was really heart-wrenching, all the Hispanic people with the interpreters that were saying they can't find housing. And I just wondered, I know that you guys bought that 25-acre parcel for a corporation yard. Is there any chance, and I know you also had 555 Kelly, are you going to do anything this year about turning either of those into more affordable housing for the people that are, experiencing hard times since AB 1482 was passed?
It is heartbreaking. I agree. We're hearing all kinds of stories about people who can't afford to live here and have to move out of the area, and it's really sad. I don't know if you call it good news, but the 2 city-owned parcels at 555 Kelly and 880 Stone Pine have been part of our discussion of where we could site affordable housing. So 555 Kelly is further along. We're going to be issuing an RFP to try to solicit creative proposals for what to do with that parcel. It's not that big, but one idea would be to expand it into parking lot nearby. We might be able to get 8 or 10, I don't know, units out of it that would be affordable. The good news is the city owns it, so there's no problem there. The 880 Stone Pine, which you just referred to, it's a 22-acre site. It has many challenges, and we've hired a new housing consultant who's going to be figuring out what we can do with all the constraints on that property. But if it turns out that there's enough land to actually build an affordable apartment house, probably, we will go ahead and try to get some developer to come and do that. So that's a little further down the pike. But 555 Kelly, I'm sure by the end of this year, will be developed. So
that would be great. Anything about Beechwood? Because the city owns that big parcel too. Some of it's wetlands, but not the whole thing.
90% is, and the access to it is extremely difficult. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Excuse me, Catherine, you had a question for Harvey?
No, I put my hand up so I could speak under government.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on 1 second then. Any other questions for Harvey? Don, you have a question for Harvey?
It's not really a question, but Harvey, the city and the county are working on a parcel by Wavecrest for potentially 14 units of farm labor housing. So that's something that's on your worksheet as well as the county's.
Yeah, that's really good news.
Okay. Thank you, Harvey.
Sure.
Catherine Slater-Carter from Montero Water and Sewer.
Thank you. Yes, we received notification today of the judge's final ruling on the lawsuit of Half Moon Bay versus Granada Community Services District and Montero Water and Sanitary District. The judge found in favor of Montera and Granada. He said it's quite clear it's a contractual issue, that the language is very clear, and you need to use standard interpretations of what the words mean. And he went through a very, very good analysis. I will send a copy of it to Michelle, to Coastside Buzz. Essentially, to quote, he said, the cost of operations and maintenance are a joint responsibility of the member agencies. So it's essentially the finances of SAM are going to be run the way they were for the first 40 years of SAM, which is good news. And I look forward to SAM and the 3 member agencies working together to keep the coast side and the public health of the all the communities on the coast side up to the high level it has been. The other important one that's been on our agenda for quite a while is the non-domestic waste source control program, and that was discussed and voted on at the December 24th meeting. It is available to watch on the SAM website, but I think a good decision was made by the boards, and so the SAM is now working on getting all of the non-domestic waste source producers registered and assessing what their waste is so that we can keep up to one of the major responsibilities of SAM, and that is the non-domestic waste source control program. So that's pretty much all the high-end stuff.
Thank you, Catherine. Sid Young has a question for you.
Catherine, can you also send that to somebody on the MCC so they can post the ruling? You said you were going to send to Michelle for Coastside Buzz.
Right. I'd be happy to.
Okay, good. And my other question is, I noticed when I watched the SAM board meeting in mid-December how much the plant almost overflowed. So that was during a really bad rainstorm on December 14th. But knowing that we have so little extra storage down there, are there any steps being taken to either cut back on building or, expanding the capabilities of that plant, or maybe adding wet weather storage in Half Moon Bay for their portion, because they are using about 60% when it's not raining, right?
Half Moon Bay in 2017 was using 52% of the SAM capacity, and essentially they're allotted 50%, but now they're up to 62%. And you are correct, the projects that we put in on the Burnham Strip held back a whole lot of flow. In fact, there were portions where the plant, some of the tanks were overflowing with treated water, not raw sewage, it was treated water. And it was contained entirely on the SAM site. But in talking to staff and looking at the charts that have been put out, it appears, and the recommendation of the general manager is that we need storage to the south of the plant. That would be Half Moon Bay, and I am sorry to say that Half Moon Bay, at my last conversation with their SAM board members, said they would never ever put in that kind of storage containment system. So with their flows going up and global, the climate change, it's likely that we're going to be getting more and more heavy storms. And I'm hoping Half Moon Bay will change its mind and talk to SAM and the member agencies about how to put in one of these very green, non-mechanical, wonderful underground flow containment systems. Unfortunately, they've been pretty firm that they don't want to do that. When we were working on the original plan for Burnham Strip was to put in 600,000 gallons of flow storage. Montero and Granada funded the first section ourselves, so we could afford 200,000. We were ordered by the Regional Water Quality Control Board and got from the 2017 flows. Beverly negotiated that we would put in another 200,000 gallons, but we really do need the full 600,000 gallons.
So if they refuse to do it, would you just say then no more hotels or whatever?
I don't want to get too deeply.
Sorry.
Right. I'm sorry. The hotels and the housing doesn't contribute to the flow. This is stormwater flow.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm sure we're going to revisit a lot of this as time goes on. It's a lot of complicated moving parts, but I see that Greg also has a question.
Well, given what you just said, maybe I don't. I was going to ask Harvey. I spoke at the Half Moon Bay City Council about this issue a month ago. And I asked them to agendize doing something about the wet weather storage because of the plant had exceeded its theoretical capacity, and Half Moon Bay was 80% of the peak flow. So my question was going to be, Harvey, has the council considered my request and been willing to agendize the issue of creating wet weather storage?
Not yet, Greg. There's so much else on our plate, but I will certainly keep it in mind and keep your pedal to the metal here, because we're all in this together in terms of making sure that SAM works well.
Thank you. Anything else for Catherine? Who else is here to represent a government agency tonight? Nobody? Okay. Any announcements from council members? I put a couple of things in the chat for the mitigated neg deck survey on the accident barriers on Devil's Slide, and for the meeting tomorrow evening sponsored by Parks and by RCD for wildfire risk reduction. So does anybody else have anything? Harvey, your hands up? No. Okay.
I didn't see those things in the chat, Claire. I wonder if you could give them to someone.
Do you want to talk about what you put in the chat?
No, I thought you said you put, I was going to just mention the barriers, but I thought you said you put that in the chat, but I just didn't see that there.
It's right up at the very beginning.
Oh, maybe I missed it because that was before I joined the meeting. So that
it's not showing up. It must be somebody else joining the meeting.
Okay. I'm not sure I can do that and run the meeting at the same time. I guess I put it in before the meeting started and it doesn't show up. If someone else would be willing to maybe Lena, maybe you could put that up there for me.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. I don't think that Sheena is here this evening. She was not able to make it. She said the next partner meeting for the scoping project is Friday, and she will have more to report after that. She did recommend attending the wildfire safety meeting on tomorrow evening. Any other announcements? Okay, moving on then to the public comment. Is there any public comment? Harold.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I have a specific topic which probably everybody heard about, the dream machines. And I'm quoting here, so from the organizers, San Mateo County airport officials notified show organizers that a substantial portion of the airport field in the heart of the event's major attraction areas is now under cultivation, is being farmed, and therefore not available to the show. So that's interesting. So I drove by the airport and then I did some screenshots on Google Earth, and it's actually true. So there are actually significant portions now that seems to be plowed and have been farmed. now also being added to be farmed. From an airport perspective, so we know this was a military airport, and basically I think was handed over at the end of World War II. Typically, it's not a good thing when military leaves the site. So there's suspected pollution in the soil area. And in addition, what we have, and that's a growing concern with the increased number of touch and goes by flight schools from San Carlos and Palo Alto, is lead pollution. So these airplanes fly with F-gas, which is basically lead-based fuel. My understanding is that also the pump station at the airport provides only F-gas, which is lead-based. So here we seem to have a mix of air pollution and then potential soil pollution from military usage. And now we hear that an event is because the airport field is getting farmed. And when you look at Google Maps, you can see actually significant portions between the runways, the north and the south of the runway is getting farmed, which then raises, of course, a couple of interesting questions. So basically, what produce and crop is getting farmed on the airport field? Who's farming? And where does the produce get sold? And is it safe for consumption? Considering both, so when you have air pollution from lead, not all plants basically absorb the lead, but if there's dust, then it might sit on, for instance, lettuce, and then if you don't wash it clean enough, then you might eat it. So the question is, whether the produce gets sold and is it safe for consumption? So I know my family, we go to the farmer's market, and this could be Half Moon Bay, this could be San Mateo right now, or even Pacifica. So is that produce, if it's not just flowers, is that basically sold somewhere there, and people should know about it, and we should understand if there's a potential risk for consumption. So we know that there's a lot of study about airports. There's actually a map, an F-gas map for California is affected by lead from aviation fuel, which basically shows maps by airport location.
Harold, can you come to
and somehow they skipped Half Moon Bay Airport. And we also know there's a study with San Jose Reed, Hillview Airport, that basically that was concluded. And then during periods of high air traffic, children living near the airport experience similar levels of lead exposure to children compared to Flint, Michigan during the city's water crisis. So right now we don't really know the situation, and I think that's very concerning. And with the announcement with Green Machines to have an airport now, ex-military, heavily used for touch and goes. So what are we potentially eating here?
Thank you, Harold. Sid Young, 3 minutes, please.
I don't think I need 3 minutes. So if anybody wants some of it, they can have it later. I did want to just piggyback on what Harold was saying. And there are a lot of neighbors that are very upset about all the touch and goes, especially because it's a repetitive circling around over our homes. And I was trying to talk to my neighbor out in the yard yesterday when we were gardening, and we had to keep stopping because the planes were buzzing overhead. And what's really distressing is it's not Eddie Andrini anymore. He used to buzz our houses, but only on weekends for the most part. But now the flight schools from both Palo Alto and San Carlos are sending students over here to do their touch and goes. I don't see why they can't be doing them on their own turf. Why do they have to come over here and buzz our houses and annoy our weekends or late afternoons when we want to be out in our yards after work? So that's, just want to say, I'm not sure what's going on with the airport. Maybe San Mateo County is, just letting people come over here for the heck of it. But, if they have flight schools in other areas, they should train them at the airports they're out of, is my opinion. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Crystalline, please.
Hey, very much. I am on the road, so I apologize if you hear weird background. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Chamber is once again doing our Teacher Appreciation event. The registration to both donate $100 directly to a teacher, and then as well as local teachers signing up to receive donations is live on our website, hmbcoastsidechamber.com, and it's right on the front page. And the page has only been alive for about 40 hours, and I've already got 100 teachers, which 101 is our record. So we're super excited. Hassett Ace Hardware is donating gift cards for supplies and all of that goodies. And the event will be March 3rd. So all of you teachers and people who know teachers that are coastside teachers, please encourage them to sign up. And business and community members, we please hope that you donate through the website or at the event itself to support our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystalline. Catherine, you have public comment?
I do, and I want to speak to the Dream Machines. It has been an important fundraiser for many of the local charities on the coast side for so many years. It's a visitor serving event. People go to the businesses afterwards. It's an important event. And I am hoping that the Midcoast Council and the county will work together to be able to reestablish this event next year. It's way too late this year. I'm sorry the Dream Machines weren't informed sooner after they'd put a lot of volunteer effort into it. And I think Harold's comments about the pollution are bear investigation. The MWSD has had to put special water treatment facilities on our wells at the airport. So the county is charging us a huge amount of money to draw water out of that. I see you smiling, Don. Out of that aquifer, and then we have to add cost to it to treat it. Needless to say, we keep that water pretty much for emergencies, as we have a very good supply from the north part of Montara with our deep artesian well and our springs. But I think this is something that does bear investigation on the pollution. And Harold, give Clemens a call about the treatment and what's going on at the airport in terms of the pollution. For a lot of years, it was very, very high nitrates. And so we've had to put that in. Using that water to irrigate crops leads to an interesting idea, but I'm sure they're not spending a whole lot more money on fertilizers because the fertilizer is already in the groundwater. But there are other things out there, and so we've been keeping an eye on them. They're not on the state list yet, but they may be there soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I see Harold has his hand up again. I'd like to keep it to a one-time comment, but go ahead at this point.
Yeah, just want to comment. Catherine, thank you for weighing in, and I forgot to mention that because I know there were issues with the airport wells. And I also know in San Jose Reed Airport, they did air measurements. And I wonder if that's something we can do here. I said we experienced a significant uptick in touch and goes in the flight schools. So thank you. Then I posted some stuff in chat so you can see some source information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If not, I'll close public comment and move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. We have minutes for January 12th, January 26th, and February 5th.
Why don't you pull January 26th?
You would pull it? You want to pull it? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And February 5th is not there yet.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve January 12th? No?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Len, would you call the roll?
Claire?
To approve January 12th.
To approve January 12th. Claire?
Yes. Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Dan? Still not here. Dave?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Passes 6-0.
Thank you. And we'll move the others to the end of the regular agenda items. Moving on to the regular agenda, we're happy to have President of the Board of Supervisors, Don Horsley, here tonight to give us an update of his view of what's happening on the coast side in the county. Welcome, Don.
Thanks, Claire. And this is a sort of an interesting evening because it turns out that this is the final term, the last year of my final term. And I understand that Dave Olson is going out at the same time as I am. You have been one of the stalwarts of MCC, and we've really appreciated working with you over the years. So you've done your time, and so have I. And people have asked me, what am I going to do afterwards? I'll be 79 by the time this thing ends. I'm going to do nothing. I will never run for anything ever again. I'm just too old to run for anything else, so this is kind of it. If you wanted to talk about the airport, that's fine, but I can tell you that I'm not an expert at the airports. And I've had people screaming at me from East Palo Alto to Sunnyvale to San Carlos because of San Carlos Airport. They have the same issues with noise. The county doesn't really have any control over noise. It really, once an airplane is in the sky, it's really controlled by the FAA. There's a law that passed by Congress in the 1990s called ANCA. It's the Airport Noise Control Act, which took away the authority for local jurisdictions to control airport noise. But if you really want to know about the airport, you probably should ask the airport management to come out and talk to you. We have done air quality measuring over in San Carlos, which has probably 10 to 20 or 50 times the traffic that you have over on Half Moon Bay. We have not found toxic levels of lead. We probably, in San Carlos, they do offer unleaded fuel and probably will eventually switch over to all unleaded. And I'm not really sure what we do at Half Moon Bay. I think it's probably still leaded, mostly because some of the planes probably have only operate on a leaded gas engine. And I know that because we've had more complaints lately, they are doing a lot more with all the airport or the flight training schools in Palo Alto as well as San Carlos, and try to get them to regulate, actually basically stay away from Half Moon Bay. But that's, it may be that eventually they're going to have to put somebody out there, but it's not going to be us. It's going to be the FAA that's going to have to do it. Somebody asked about the Dream Machine. I got a call from James one day and said, "Oh, we're going to have to cancel it because there are crops at the airport." And I told her, it's complete news to me. I have no idea. And I talked to our county manager and I said, hey, I would rather have one angry farmer versus the whole coast side angry at me. So what can we do about this? But we decided, because of talking to Janie, the planning group is pretty much falling apart. 3 of their people have illnesses and they didn't think they had the ability to do any kind of modification. So what we're going to do is they raise in a neighborhood between 75 and 80,000 a year, and the county is going to make it up for them. So they will get a couple of 80,000 from the county to make it up for their loss of income. I also think that the residents in the area probably be happy not to have the Dream Machine because of the mess of traffic. So you have to deal with that, fighting that traffic. Some of the other things that, the multimodal trail that we've been working on for, it seems like forever. It started with my first aide, Nicholas Calderon, then it went to Ellie Dahlman, then it ended up with Ray Hunter. And we had some difficulty with Caltrans. Caltrans wouldn't give us the encroachment permit based on an argument about the fix that we did at Surfers Beach. They wanted us to maintain their construction. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. You built it, you maintain it. So eventually we got through that and we finally got the encroachment permit. And that project went out to bid. And hopefully this summer, the multimodal trail will get built. And it goes all the way from El Granada School and it connects to the Naomi Patrick's Trail. I think Half Moon Bay has got a link that has to be completed. I'm not sure what their time frame is, but eventually should be able to, that multimodal trail should get you all the way from, what's the street by the school there? It's
Coronado.
Coronado, always into Half Moon Bay. It's pretty cool. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about, I guess, the parks, and I'm sure that people will want to know about what we're doing in Quarry Park. The county, what we did fund is with the RCD, we funded them to do a scoping project. They'll be working on that. We did come up with additional funding, as you know. It's a couple $1 million essentially for our parks, because we have something like 13,000 acres of parkland, not only Quarry Park, but we've got places in other parts of the county as well. So there are a number of different projects. You do know, obviously, we took about 500,000 of trees out of some of the medians at El Granada. And you also have probably heard from some of the residents, they would like to revegetate those spaces. And I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm fine with it. The thing is that we have to figure out, what's it going to look like? Who's going to do it? I don't know if Lena has told you, but one time we thought about Granada Community Service District, but they actually don't want to do that. They have some other priorities. And if MCC was willing to lead that process, I'd be willing to fund it. Whatever it takes to fund it. So if you wanted to lead that process, we also hear from other people who don't want to take any more of the trees out. It's really, as oftentimes, with things that look pretty clear on one, when you begin this process, it turns out to be a little more complicated. But again, it's not that I want to dump it on you, but it's just sort of the logical for if some group wants to revegetate it, somebody has to take the lead.
So Don?
Help.
Yeah, Don, we have done some investigation in that area. Both had one conversation with you. And also, parks, as well as for the GCSD standpoint, but also from your own parks organization, is reluctant to touch that area until the issue of the responsibility for it is made clear. So one thing to do is to try to understand all of the parcels that have to have a stake in the median to be able to talk with them. And the other is to see if the county can work something more friendly for an organization that wants to take responsibility other than being at the behest of a lot of individual landowners. And there's some ideas to bring forward.
Yeah, essentially that's right. You have to figure out how to deal with that. I don't think that's an insurmountable obstacle, but it's going to take some thinking, and somebody's going to have to I think there has to be some community involvement, and some agencies got to take responsibility for leading a planning process. When I hear people talk about revegetating, I'm not really sure what they mean. I've heard people say we got fireproof trees. I don't know anything about the fireproof trees, so they all burn. But anyway, so that's for something that's for the future. The county's embarked on a big effort about equity. And one of the things that I do, and I've done my last time I was the board president, we focused a lot on Black lives, essentially Black Lives Matter. And this coming year, I want to do some community conversations about what really are Black lives, and not necessarily talking about from the point of view of the obstacles, but rather how people have overcome them and what those obstacles were, and some of the heroes of the civil rights movement. So, you'll hear more about that as the year unfolds. On firearm safety, myself and Supervisor Pine are having a convening on March the 11th with the Attorney General talking about firearm safety. Now, we can't do much about gun control, but there are things that we can do with the expansion of red flag laws. So those are laws that take guns away from people who have demonstrated either through criminal action or through threats that they shouldn't be allowed to have a firearm. So we're working on that March 11th. The Connect the Coast site, I believe, is it's going to go to the Board of Supervisors sometime this spring or summer. We also have a grant for about $1.5 million to start all the planning for the roundabouts or traffic controls at the two intersections of Cypress and California. And I think I already told you about the MCC, the multimodal trail. There's a mental health. It's kind of an interesting thing that we are doing with the city of Half Moon Bay. Well, there's two different kinds of things that, well, as you know, I used to be in law enforcement, and having seen a number of cases with mentally ill people go wrong, I asked the county to give me funding for 4 clinicians to work with the cities of Daly City, South San Francisco, San Mateo, and Redwood City. So far, the program's going really well. And then with the city of Half Moon Bay, they're working on a little bit different program with a local CBO. And so we have jointly funding it between the county and the city, so that our 911 system, they're going through a training process that when they get a call for someone in mental health distress, that is, hopefully those clinicians go out either with or subsequent to or before law enforcement, so that some of these cases where somebody's mentally ill, and the result is maybe not what we like it to be. We'd like to see if we can, be more successful, so that there's a more successful outcome, so that the person gets the kind of treatment and maybe services that they need, and that everyone comes out safe, and we don't have any tragic event. So those are kind of the highlights of, there's a lot of other things we do in the county, and we did go through redistricting. I ended up with more of Belmont. So now instead of only a small part of Belmont, I have half of Belmont. So I have half of Belmont, all of San Carlos, all of Atherton, Woodside, Portola Valley. And as you know, the town of Woodside is now Mountain Lion territory. And you can't build anything there or in Portola Valley. Actually, it's kind of funny that they came up with that idea, but reaching for anything they can to avoid building affordable housing. We are working, one of the big things that I've really focused on is farm worker housing and farm worker issues. I have the county council working on a minimum wage. I was trying to do it for only farm workers, so they would be paid $15.50 an hour, which is higher than the state minimum wage. And also the state minimum wage talks about you have to have a minimum number of employees. And I don't care if it's only one employee, I just want it to be all farm workers to be paid $15.50 an hour. And then we're also working on another thing of a farm workers advisory commission, but I want it to consist of farm workers, not just people who are allies, but actual farm workers, so that they can represent themselves and represent some of the working conditions that really need to be addressed. And for farm worker housing, I did mention the project we're working with the city of Half Moon Bay and Post. We have done somewhere about a dozen or so or better of minor projects for farm worker housing, but it's really very difficult on the South Coast. And it's difficult to build housing any place is difficult, as you know, as Greg pointed out, even Cypress Point, people continue to fight that. When we talk about, the need for service workers, the people that go to the Half Moon Bay City Council complaining about the lack of housing, those are the kind of people that we would house at Cypress Point. And I understand that people, they essentially don't want it. I understand that, they changed their name from Resistenti to Midcoast Eco to kind of, say that it's based on ecology or something. But the reality is because there's a need for low-income housing, that there are people who provide services to residents on the coast side, and they have to live someplace. You can't have them living in, someplace in the Central Valley clogging up freeways. It's not fair to them. And ultimately, I think, it's something that really is needed. So that's just, and I'd be happy to answer questions as best I can. You're muted.
Thank you, Don. This isn't an item that we're going to be voting on anything for, so I'm open to questions or comments from either the public or the council. And I think Sid has her hand up. 3 minutes, if you could, please.
I'll try. Maybe Don could write down the questions I'm going to ask and then respond after I use my 3 minutes up. One of them is that SMC alert is not working on the coast. I even called somebody over and talked to somebody in the sheriff's department, and they said that they would try to, get CHP to alert us about the tunnel. But I noticed last weekend there was a crash that closed both lanes of 92 right down by where the Crystal Springs Reservoir was. Not one single SMC alert came through. So I don't know. You don't have to answer it, but I'm not the only one that probably has noticed that. Secondly, I don't know if you've heard about the lawsuit, or actually the judge's ruling up in Lake County, but they declined to allow a developer to build a multi-unit project because there was inadequate emergency evacuation taken into consideration when planning that. And I guess that's partly what we feel about here on the Midcoast. There's not good emergency evacuation routes, and especially if you were to cram in 71 more units on an area that's really hard to get in and out of. I just think it's not going to fly. Even if you guys pass it, it may end up going all the way to the courts. But Half Moon Bay, on the other hand, could really use some extra housing funds. So that's just my thought on that. I did watch the Flood Park video the other night, a Zoom meeting, and there were quite a few people in charge or interested in keeping the little few trees that they wanted to keep, and you guys are trying to tear them out to put in more ball fields and everything. And I found it kind of amazing, since we have so little recreation here, in spite of when Rich Gordon put together it back in 2002, a Midcoast mitigation fee that would be collected from every single developer on new buildings, et cetera. And so far it's gone from collecting, and now I guess the Parks District thinks it's their money, but it's really originally was to build a community center for the Midcoast, because we don't have any services up here like they do in the city of Half Moon Bay or the city of Pacifica. So that's under the the Quimby Act. I don't think it was supposed to be a slush fund for county parks, but you guys have taken over all the parks pretty much that we have out here, and yet nobody has gotten a chance to give us a community center yet. You mostly give all the money on Measure K to Half Moon Bay, I've noticed. They get a lot of money, and nobody asks for us because we don't have representation. Anyway, so the last one is on the Connect the Coast side. I really think that you should consider an emergency evacuation route because it is very insufficient at the moment. And I've mentioned before that on Devil's Slide, in that narrow part through the eucalyptus grove, I mean, it would be the biggest choke point to get out of here, and never mind trying to get through Half Moon Bay because they have gridlock as it is. So it might be something you want to talk about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sid.
I can answer those. I think I sort of scribbled it down. First one on SMC alert, it does work on the coast, but I think what happens with it's dependent upon, if CHP gets an accident,
Mark up the other one if you want.
Sheriff's Department, and put it on the SMC alert. If that doesn't happen, maybe we should have the captain from CHP. There's a new one, actually a pretty good guy, Jason Cavett, with newer captain Armando. I forgot his last name there. Andy Armando, that's what it is. Make them or have them respond to that. The lawsuit about the emergency evacuation requirement. Actually, Cypress Point is closer to the highway than most of Moss Beach. So I don't really think that's a valid consideration. I do think that it's probably true that some of the things that we would have to do if we were going to actually finish that, or if Mid-Penn is actually going to build those 71 units, they're going to have to be a fix of that the intersection of California, and there has to also be something at the intersection of Carlos and 16th Street. My preference would be to take Carlos Street and actually connect it over to 16th, which is an easier, more, I think, a safer way to make a right turn, even a left turn. And there would also have to be some improvements on the streets that basically have to be more bike friendly, walkable friendly. So there are things that would have to occur if that project was going to be successful. You also talked about the project at Flood Park. It is 10% of the trees would be removed. They'll all be replanted someplace else, or not those trees, but other trees would be planted in a 1-for-1 in other parts of the park. The purpose of that park, it's really not the same thing as a like Memorial Park or a rural park. It really is a city park. And our goal is to provide some field space, play space for kids in North Fair Oaks. North Fair Oaks has absolutely nothing. And so that's the goal there. And I know that a lot of the people in Menlo Park, it's an upper income area, essentially don't want to see a whole lot of kids playing in that park because it makes a lot of noise for them, I'm sure. But that, I think we're going to proceed with that. You also talked a little bit, going back to the idea about evacuation. We do work on that. The Department of Emergency Management and our CAL FIRE people do work on emergency emergency evacuation, not just for the coastside, but for the whole county, because there are other parts of the county that also have high fire risk: Woodside, Emerald Hills, Portola Valley, Millbrae. And we did invest pretty heavily in Zone Haven, and we've also invested pretty heavily in cameras. You said about a slush fund for the park. Sorry, I can't really answer to that. I have no idea if there's a slush fund for the parks or not. And I think I got them all.
Actually, the Connect the Coast side is specifically not addressing emergency evacuation from the coast. So that was why I mentioned that. And the fact that the County Board of Supervisors gave $13 million to Flood Park, and we don't have the community center that back when Rich Gordon was our supervisor, he funded he started a thing to find out. He did a a study in 2002 about the needs of the coast side for recreation, the Midcoast, the unincorporated Midcoast, not Half Moon Bay. And then they started collecting that money. But they used to give us, when Jim Porter was around, he came to the MCC and reported what they spent that money on. And lately we haven't had a report. I guess it would be Steve Monowitz now, but they're supposed to, give that report to the supervisors too. And I think it's just been swept aside. I don't think there's any accountability for what they're spending it on right now. And we still don't have a community center.
You've already said.
I know. I wanted to clarify what I was telling him, and he might want to respond now that he knows what I meant.
You should ask Rich Gordon. I have no idea. I don't know.
You don't know about the reporting thing?
I have, I think it's a good point to ask. I can ask for a report.
Okay, thanks.
I haven't seen one.
Okay. I think Lena wanted to clarify some of what Sid was asking.
Yes, thank you. One thing is, I believe Nicholas has already addressed your last point, Sid. So I'm sure he'd be happy to do that again, and I'm happy to get that for you. With the SMC alerts, I do have some information on that because I did some research. And basically, they're doing a huge overhaul of SMC alerts in totality, not only in the sense that it's going to be much more geographically specific, but also it's going to be completely different. They're not going to be using it for traffic issues, for the exact point that you've highlighted, which is we're completely dependent on CHP or fire or whoever responds to submit those alerts. And so they're not necessarily consistent, because if it's an emergency, CHP is going to prioritize the emergency and not to the alert. So there will be a huge overhaul. I've already spoken with the Department of Emergency Management, and they're more than happy to do a presentation at the MCC before that overhaul goes live to give you some more information on what it's going to look like. But point very well taken. And we would
Thanks, Lena.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I go back, Claire, for a minute about airport out there? You really, it would be. I hate to say I don't like airports. I don't like to have to deal with them because I get so many complaints, and there's not much I can do. But it'd really probably be good to have the airport staff come over to a meeting so you could ask them questions. And I mean, I think they're sensitive to the issues, but I don't. I think at some point they're going to have to have. You're going to have some. You're not going to get a control tower. That's just not going to happen. But I think they're eventually going to have somebody over there to control all those touch. I mean, the touch and goes, stuff like that. I think the reason these flight schools use it is because there's no controls, because nobody tells them don't do it. So I think we have to, and I think you would be good advocates. Let them know, because I don't let them know too. I think you're going to have some technology over there. We add a lot of technology in San Carlos to control things like that, and could control. At one time we were actually charging for landings. I don't know if I'm not exactly sure about the reason we did that is we had a commercial operation that ended up in San Carlos that we had something like 30. It would all come in at 7 o'clock in the morning over Atherton and over San Carlos. And we were getting that's why I said we have meetings and people screaming at us. So we had to do all kinds of adjustments and basically take away a lot of their tie downs so that we kind of choked it down so they could only do a couple a day. And we might have to do something similar at the airport in Half Moon Bay. I only just started getting a lot of complaints. I think it would be worth your while, and I would come at the same time and just listen to their explanation, and we got to figure out. You don't want a lot of complaints. I don't want a lot of complaints. I would like to see us figure out some way of minimizing it. The airport's there; it's not going away. And there's going to be noise on a sunny day, sunny weekends. But those touch and goes are things that, we got to strive to figure out some way of controlling them.
I appreciate that. I think the MCC probably will have items on the airport and also on SMC and some of the other things that have been brought up. I think Fran has a question for Don.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, this is Fran Pollard. Hi, Supervisor Horsley, good to see you again.
Hi, Fran.
I just want to implore you to please continue to cut the trees. I know there's a group, I think we no sooner started talking about cutting trees and they were already wanting to replant. And, you know, I said, we have to wait for rainy season again. If we ever get another rainy or a couple of years of rain, yeah, replant. But I think it's much more crucial. It's to cut the trees during this drought period. And again, it's drying up here as fast. We've had what, 2-3 a month now of warm weather, getting hotter every day. And everything's drying up again. So it really is scary. I think that takes precedence over cutting the trees and preventing a fire. Taking over the whole or destroying a community takes precedence over replanting. And yes, we can replant in the future. They can talk about it, but I don't see anybody replanting right away. But I really would urge you to continue to keep cutting and maybe allocate some more funds. Did I read or hear that the county has $32 billion more than you ever thought you had? And I think you could spend a few million here.
It's actually the state.
Was that the state?
Well, state has got the extra money, but yeah.
Go ahead.
We do get this. The federal government has this ARPA money. I forgot exactly what ARPA stands for, but we get about 75 million. Yeah, I think we'll be looking to see what else we could do there. But I'm not going to make any predictions yet. But our next budget will be asking for additional funding once again for more tree removal. Let's put it that way.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Also, just to back up what Sid was talking about, it's the mitigation fund for when builders build a house in the county in our unincorporated areas. They pay a fee into this fund has been collected for almost 20 years now, I think. So there's got to be a few $1 million in there if it hasn't already been spent. And it was supposed to go towards the community parks and center, maybe helping us purchase some land that's needed for a park or and the community center. And that's what that's all about. And so, yeah, we need some of that money coming here because, you know, the county is, we have no city council. All the cities have city councils that can help them. But you're like our city council besides being our county government. And we need your help. So I think that's what she was referring to.
We can ask for a report on it, but it might be a little premature, but we are going to buy, in that big wave, we are going to buy the south parcel. And I forgot exactly what it is, but that is a potential site for a community center.
Hate to say it, Don, it's in a tsunami zone.
So,
we're not going to put you in a tsunami.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Don.
There's 3 more people with their hands raised for questions for Don. It's Catherine, Harold, and Michelle. And I think after that, we'll let Don go and get some needed rest because we appreciate you being here. Catherine.
Don, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Haven't listened to you in a long time, but with the COVID and all this Zoom stuff is nice. And thank you so much again for being here. To sort of tie into what Fran was just saying, it appears the county is doing work in cities, for the people who need mental health help. That's happening in all these cities. other thing that you built the library in a city. The county seems to pay more attention to the cities that actually have their own income, and particularly up here get left out. About the affordable housing, traffic is an issue. We shelter in place here on weekends. When there's an accident at the tunnels, they are closed for hours. All of a sudden, everybody has to go through Half Moon Bay, and it gets nasty. Or when something's on 92, again, it gets nasty. I think there are better places for this affordable housing that will meet the needs of the folks who are living in it, rather than meeting the need of some deal that was cut in the 1970s between a developer and somebody who was doing the planning for the local coastal program. So I would like to see us work together to find a user-friendly location instead of one that's stuck off in the sticks somewhere where you have to have a car. And I will say that and the other thing about that site is it's the smallest fire station. It doesn't have the same kind of access for emergency services that Half Moon Bay does. And if somebody's trying to get up here, if somebody has a heart attack there on a Saturday or a Friday, the emergency vehicles have to weave and go up and down the medians and all kinds of things. It's not pretty. And you were talking about, I just have one more point, Claire.
Okay.
Carlos and 16th, MWSD spent over $1 million fixing a pipe under the highway in that area. If that road is changed, the replacement of that pipe has to be on someone else because the community already paid for it. And we need to be very, very, very aware of, and Public Works has been pretty good, but we need to start early on communicating with the local water and sewer agencies about where our pipes are, because when you're changing these roads, the easements for the public utilities are underground, and this community shouldn't have to triple pay for stuff. So thank you, and I'll try and stay in touch more.
Okay. You're right about the utility. Like even when we were doing a multimodal trail, we found that where we thought was the sewer line turned out not to be where it was at. So we ended up having to move, our little bridge and, move things around. So that's true.
Asphalt are always a problem, as your Public Works Department knows.
Yeah. In regards to where we put things you do hear about, I'm sure you hear from the newspapers about the state's requirement for local jurisdiction for housing. And we have one of those requirements, just like a city does. In fact, we're supposed to put, hundreds of thousands of units someplace in the unincorporated parts of the county. And there isn't any other place. There's only one location. No, there's only one location for affordable housing that we have identified in our LCP, and it was in that particular site. So if you can find another site that's identified as low-income housing for a similar number of people in the unincorporated area, not in the city of Half Moon Bay. City of Half Moon Bay's got their own problems. We have to do it in the unincorporated area. So there really isn't any other parcel that is that offers that opportunity and meets a requirement that the county has for affordable housing.
There is a site. There is a large site in El Granada that's owned by the school district that is also designated for affordable housing.
Okay, that's worth looking into. Harold,
part of the site.
Yeah, Mr. Horsley, I just want to provide some additional comments about the airport, as you made some remarks. So there were about probably 700 to 800 entries on Nextdoor. So this was highly discussed. We have about 12,000 residents between El Granada, Onterra, Moss Beach, Princeton that are impacted by the air traffic. We had one resident, he lives near the church in Moss Beach. He did a sound recording for 2 hours. There were 51 flyovers in this 2-hour time window. That means every 2.5 minutes there was an airplane going. And so coming out of that next door group discussion, there's a smaller group. There's a work group of about 8 or 9 people. 3 are former pilots. And we studied the noise abatement guidelines between Palo Alto, San Carlos, and Half Moon Bay. And what we found is that in Half Moon Bay, we have the weakest guideline. We also, as I mentioned, is we have 12,000 residents directly impacted under the flight pass. That's not the case in San Carlos and Palo Alto, where they try to route it over non-populated areas or the bay. When you look at the flight path that's outlined in the noise abatement guideline. Second one, what I want to say is here is the offenders. So we have data now. We can monitor the flights. And what we found is that a lot of the pilots now, they turn off their transponders, or they basically exclude themselves from various applications, so they can't be tracked, but they still have the transponders off because it's illegal. But what we have now is we have a system that we can monitor the airspace. And what we found is with the data is that the offenders are really the flight schools. These are not the local pilots, it's the flight schools. They come over, they do 20 touch and goes, they circle for hours. And the flight time is money. So what they do is they basically touch and then go, and then they circle over residential areas. The hospital, for instance, they don't care about, and it's just constant. And this is kind of newer. We always had the airport, and the people are not against the airport, but it's a constant touch and goes. And these are the flight schools, mostly out of San Carlos. We had good responses, and I saw you were copied in some of the communication. So Palo Alto seems to be more receptive.
Harold, can you finish?
Yeah, so that's the situation. So I just want to provide that context. So we try to be productive, and we're going to come up with suggestions on that topic.
On San Carlos, we did try, because the planes in San Carlos fly over a lot more than 12,000 people. They fly over many cities. We did try to get FAA to require them to go out over the bay, and we were denied the permission, mostly because it really interferes with SF International and Oakland International. So none of those flight patterns over the bay were approved.
Thank you. Final question or comment from Michelle Weil.
Hi, Supervisor Horsley. Thanks for coming tonight. Lots of important issues discussed, but I do want to add my thoughts to the airport noise and potential lead exposure issue. In Santa Clara County, they did a study. The Board of Supervisors down there commissioned the study and found that there were 13,000 children within, I think it was 1.5 miles of the airport, and they had increased levels of lead in their blood. And then the following year, that was commissioned in 2020, the study came back, showed this increased levels of lead, and they then banned leaded fuel from being sold. So I know that we have little control on what happens once the planes are in the air, but we can control what happens on the ground and whether leaded fuel is sold in San Mateo County. So I just wanted to ask you if, as part of the Board of Supervisors, if you would consider